What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Pistons Daily, where you can find daily content covering all things Detroit Pistons, Monday through Friday. I'm your host. My name is Kyle Garrison. I'm over on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2. I talk all things Detroit sports. So head over there, give me comments, questions, concerns, episode ideas. I'd love to hear from all you guys. Also, shout out to everyone who tunes in every single day. The support on the channel has been unbelievable, and it is all thanks to you guys. So once again, I really appreciate it. But with that being said, let's jump right into today's video. So right away, Ron Holland was in a Bleacher Report article that was released earlier today. I'm recording this on Tuesday. This will be released on Wednesday. But Bleacher Report basically just released their top 10 trade pieces currently in the NBA. I won't go through everything, but just for an example, the number 10 overall trade chip is a first-round pick. It's the Milwaukee Bucks 2029 first-round pick. And obviously, because they're in a very different position than the Pistons right now with their organization, that pick becomes a little bit more valuable. The uncertainty of Giannis's future as well. So I think the Bleacher Report is just trying to take a look at what teams kind of have a bunch of young assets that they can try and move, and then also what teams are in kind of purgatory right now where they have a star and they're trying to fill them with young pieces, and they might have to do that by unloading some draft capital. So Bleacher Report basically just had some players, some picks, and one of the players at the fourth spot was Ron Holland as the fourth most valuable trade chip in the NBA. And this comes from Zach Buckley over at Bleacher Report. And I don't have a crazy response to this. I understand Bleacher Report's slow time during the offseason right now, trying to create some excitement, create some new narratives, and you throw a guy like Ron Holland who dominated in the Summer League, showed out. A lot of people are talking about him. He's getting some national media attention, so they threw him in here as well. I'll read what Buckley wrote about Ron Holland. So he says, could recency bias be responsible for Ron Holland, the second ranking so high? Maybe, but when you're talking about a prospect with this much raw talent, you're kind of supposed to get carried away when they show signs of encouragement. And the spring-loaded swingman flashed plenty of them during a dominant showing at Summer League. Did you see a better player out there than Ron? A Pistons executive asked Spotrac's Keith Smith in Las Vegas. If you say you did, you better be ready for an argument. Ron was so good. We said it when we drafted him that we felt like he was going to be one of the best players in the draft. As a rookie, he just got better every single day. Now he's going to break out and have an incredible season. The jumper and the free throw shooting, those are real, end quote. Buckley then continues and says, Give Holland a reliable outside shot, and everything could open up for the 6'8" athletic forward. Since the Summer League sample isn't big enough to assume he has a jump shot now, though it's still worth wondering if the Pistons would consider letting him go to get Cade Cunningham a true co-star. Because if Holland's shot remains a question, then so too does his long-term fit with fellow non-spacers, Ausar Thompson and Jalen Duren. And I'll just give my thoughts on this real quick. I agree. I think that we've talked about it before. It's a question mark whether or not you can have Ron Holland, Ausar Thompson, and Jalen Duren on the floor at the same time. Those are three of your young pieces, three of really six staples in this young core. And you want to have the luxury of being able to play them all at the same time. So it's very concerning having three non-shooters on the floor at the same time. I just don't think that that's going to work. But I will stand on this until proven wrong. Ron Holland can become a good shooter in this league, and if he can, this will allow the Pistons to play him and Ausar Thompson at the same time, while also playing Ausar and Jalen Duren at the same time and not being too weary about the potential of having three non-shooters on the floor at the same time. I get it. It's very concerning. But Ron Holland has shown the ability to develop a jump shot that we really haven't seen from Ausar Thompson and Jalen Duren just quite yet. The fact that Ron is 20 years old, just simply as a player, he's growing. He's coming into his own. He realizes what he has to do to stay on the floor, to play significant minutes. And I think just with his long-term upside, the fact that he's 20 years old, and that you don't want to really unload him as an asset until you really see what he can be, the Pistons should stick with him and continue to develop him because there's a lot of untapped potential there that he's continued to show. He showed in the Summer League. He's willing to work on it, and he's a guy that just embodies Detroit. I don't think that he's going to thrive anywhere else as much as he could in Detroit long term. So Trajan Langdon's, I don't think, going to unload his first and only first-round draft pick so far, especially in a weak draft class, comparatively speaking to past drafts. The fifth overall turning out to be a gem could make Trajan Langdon look like a genius, And unless you're getting a ridiculous return, I don't think that the Pistons should unload Ron Holland at this stage of his career. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you think that Ron Holland could be a potential trade chip going forward, or if you agree with me and you'd like to see the Pistons continue to try and tap into his potential and move along with him going forward. But moving on, I wanted to touch on Caris LeVert had his first real media availability earlier today on Tuesday, July 29th. You'll see this on Wednesday, but I just want to talk about the fact that he came out and right away said that he did not realize the Pistons were interested until the last moment, really. And so that kind of makes me think that the Pistons wanted to bring back Dennis Schroeder, but he was asking for an extra year on the deal or an extra 2 years on the deal. And he wanted a more defined role that the Pistons just simply couldn't offer him. So that's why he decided to go to Sacramento, took a 3-year deal. Him and Caris LeVert are both making $14 million. So the money annually is the same. But again, that extra year on the deal, it just makes the Kings more tied up long-term in a 31-year-old. And with the 2-year deal that Caris LeVert got, he's 30 years old. It's just less of a long-term commitment that the Pistons had to make. So I like the idea that the Pistons were going to bring Dennis Schroeder back because they were going to try and reward him for playing excellently for them in the playoffs. He filled a hole that they absolutely needed to fill going into the playoffs, and that was a second rotational ball handler. He came in, did great stuff, had some excellent games in the playoffs. He pretty much won them a game in the playoffs as well. And, shout out to what he brought, but I like that the Pistons were able to pivot very quickly and bring in a guy like Caris LeVert, who has played under J.B. Bickerstaff before and has really just embodied the culture and the play style that JB brought to the table in Cleveland, and is hopefully going to bring that over to the Pistons this coming year. He also, Caris LeVert, which I didn't even realize, talked about the connection that he has with Brooklyn, and Trajan Langdon was the assistant GM from 2016 to 2019 in Brooklyn, so him and Caris LeVert worked together, and I didn't even realize that. Now I always just think of Trajan Langdon's time in New Orleans, but going back a few years, he was around that Kevin Durant era, that James Harden, that Kyrie Irving era early on in Brooklyn, and before he was able to take the job in New Orleans. So he has that connection with Caris, which I love to see. And Caris also talked about just the high character. He talked about the guy's willingness to compete at a high level. And I know this offseason was a bit underwhelming, and I'm not saying that the Pistons are some insane free agency destination, but at least they're stepping in the right direction. And you can get a guy like Caris LeVert, who is searching for his first NBA title and is creeping up on his mid-30s. I mean, he just turned 30, so not really creeping up on his mid-30s, but he is in the prime of his career right now. And a lot of players in the past wouldn't have wanted to waste their final years of their career or the best years of their career in Detroit. But now with the intriguing young core and the ability to play alongside a guy like Cade Cunningham, people want to come to Detroit. And I'm just glad to hear that Caris LeVert wants to be back in Michigan. And I know that Duncan Robinson feels the same way as well. So I just think it's really cool that Caris LeVert was able to come out and just say great things about Detroit. I think in the past when free agents would come here, they would talk about, well, this team's kind of stepping in the right direction and they've got some exciting young pieces and they just need to kind of get some more veteran talent to push them in the right direction. The Pistons are already in the right direction, and these guys like Caris LeVert and Duncan Robinson are just coming in to add value overall and not really take minutes or shots away from the young studs that the Pistons have drafted, but rather just be complementary pieces. I think both those guys will do a great job at doing that this year. So I'm glad that Caris LeVert touched on that, and I'm glad he was able to talk to media today because I really like his game overall. And I think that he can be a valuable asset for this team going forward. But let me know what you guys think of Caris LeVert's comments just about his time in Michigan and about what he's heard from Tim Hardaway Jr. about this young core and about this team overall. And just the fact that he has connections with J.B. Bickerstaff and Trajan Langdon, what you could kind of see that going forward for him in the future of this team. But moving on, I know I want to talk about Caris LeVert a little bit more, and I just wanted to touch on some of the specific things that he talked about with J.B. Bickerstaff and the growth in his game overall. And obviously, they both were in Cleveland together for 3 years. And overall, Caris LeVert just kind of talked about how J.B. Bickerstaff untapped a defensive side of Caris's game that he didn't really knew he had. He said that J.B. did a great job of just kind of figuring out a way to untap different areas of Caris LeVert's game, become more of a just consistent overall defensive, offensive-minded player who attacks the rim in different ways, can stretch the floor as well, plays his own style and his own pace of basketball. And over the last 3 years, he's really revitalized his career. I think efficiency-wise, his time in Brooklyn just wasn't great. It was also a bad team, and he was kind of forced into a role that he wasn't quite ready for. But as he got more comfortable, as he started playing with a really, really solid coach in JB Bickerstaff, every single part of his game has started to come into its own, and he's become an unbelievable defender. And I think that just speaks volumes to, like I said, the ability for JB Bickerstaff and Trajan Langdon to identify guys that can consistently defend multiple positions. And this team is rounding out to look like a very, very solid defensive group. We saw it last year. The Pistons were horrible defensively with Monty Williams and Dwayne Casey as their coaches. And last year, they were the 10th team in the league in defensive rating overall. So you can see everywhere JB goes, the overall impact he has, specifically on the defensive side of the floor. It's infectious. It was infectious with JB Bickerstaff, or with Caris LeVert, excuse me. It was infectious last year. With the Pistons in his first year with Asar Thompson, and allowed Jalen Duren to become a much better defender towards the back end of the year. So I'm just happy to see overall that Caris LeVert is excited to come and play for a defensive-minded coach once again, and really just bring his overall skill set that JB Bickerstaff helped develop to his team and to Trajan Langdon's team, and to a squad where he's going to come in and be a veteran voice that gives them very solid minutes off the bench. So I'm excited to see what he can bring, especially on the defensive side of the floor. But I wanted to dive into just some numbers overall. I know we've talked about, Caris LeVert's going to be a better defender than Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, Dennis Schroeder, and there hasn't really been much that I've done to back that up. So I wanted to back that up for you guys right here, and just talk about the overall defensive rating from those three players I mentioned compared to Caris LeVert. So last year, Dennis Schroeder had 116.6 defensive rating. It was his best since 2021. The year before that, he was 120.9 defensive rating, which is just really bad. And then you look at Malik Beasley. Last year, he had 116 defensive rating, 118 the year prior to that in Milwaukee. He's also just getting older, so that was probably not going to remain consistent this year. Would probably gotten back up into the 118, 119s like it's been throughout his career. And then looking at Tim Hardaway Jr., he had an 118 defensive rating. The 2 years prior to that, 118.5, 118.6. So he, as a defender, was on the downturn as well. And Caris LeVert has been unbelievable as a defender really throughout his entire career. His career best of 109.9 defensive rating is better than everybody that I mentioned. And then you look at even last year, in his time in Cleveland and Atlanta, he had 115.1 defensive rating, which obviously you'd like that to be better. But in Cleveland, in his 2 years with JB Bickerstaff, year one, he was 111.7, and then year two was 112.6. So clearly, JB Bickerstaff was able to untap a different part of Caris LeVert's game defensively as a long, athletic wing who can guard 1 through 3, and it just gives you much more defensive versatility than the guys I mentioned like Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Dennis Schroeder. So I'm very glad that the Pistons kind of shored up those defensive weak links. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. struggled a lot, Malik Beasley at times, and then also Dennis Schroeder wasn't great defensively. Smaller guards who are very one-dimensional, especially on the offensive side of the floor, is something that I think the Pistons are trying to get away from. So Caris LeVert makes a lot of sense. A guy that can handle the ball. He's not a terrible three-point shooter by any means. He can attack the rim. He can finish as well. He's a very good passer, and he plays defense. I think that fits the blueprint much more than some of those other guys that we mentioned that were on the team last year. And I just like that they really made it a priority to go out and find defensive, long, athletic playmakers to fill those backup combo guard roles. But overall, I'm just really excited to see what Caris brings to the table. I think that the defensive vision that this team has implemented is going to allow guys like him and guys like Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey to really come into their own as defenders. And you won't see a single weak link outside of Duncan Robinson on the floor defensively really whatsoever next year. I think that you'll have very, very solid defensive players all around some guys that you're a little bit more weary about, and that will allow them to kind of untap parts of their game we didn't know they had. Like last year, Asar Thompson made Jalen Duren a much better defender overall, and I think that could be the case for somebody like Duncan Robinson, who can play off Asar and Ron Holland as those wings, and it'll be harder for teams to really key in on them when he's playing defense and try to expose that area of the Pistons defense, and rather just kind of fit into what we know he can do and what we know that Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Ron Holland, Asar Thompson, and even Cade Cunningham can kind of make up for some of the inefficiencies on the defensive end for guys like Duncan Robinson. But let me know what you guys think of the defensive prowess that this front office and this coaching staff has prided themselves on, and if you think that Caris LeVert can come in and kind of pick up where he left off in Cleveland as a very, very solid guard and wing defender. But moving on, before we wrap things up, I just wanted to touch on the fact that Trajan Langdon was in Allen Park on Tuesday, checking out Lions training camp. I don't believe he was there last year. I could be wrong. I could be mistaken on that. But he was at training camp today, and I'm not sure how many of my listeners are fans of the Detroit sports teams, but I just love the Tigers, Red Wings, and Lions and Pistons. I'm a big Detroit sports fan overall, and I love how they're all starting to catch stride at the same time, and you can see that nobody wants to get left behind. I think the Red Wings right now are probably the worst of the four teams, and they still have potential to be very competitive next year. I think that they can be good in the next couple of years. They've got a good farm system, similar to how the Tigers have a great farm system as well in their minor leagues. So I'm excited about the future of this city, and I just love the underdog mentality that everybody has embraced, and the fact that Trajan Langdon is going over to Allen Park to talk with Brad Holmes and talk with Dan Campbell and see what that regime has done to absolutely turn around the franchise altogether is very encouraging, because Trajan Langdon and JB Bickerstaff are tasked with a very similar job. They have to take the Pistons, who for the past 15 plus years have been stuck in mediocrity, and try and make them an Eastern Conference contender. And in just 1 year, they did. I mean, I think the Pistons last year, with what we saw from the Knicks series with Jaden Ivey and Isaiah Stewart being injured, this team is ready to compete right now. And I love that Trajan Langdon is going over and really picking the brain of two great sports minds, not just football minds in Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, but overall just great just minds of athletics, and they understand how to get the most out of their players, and it's not just specific to football. So I love Detroit sports so much, and I'll say it throughout the entire year. I'm just so grateful to get the chance to cover the Detroit Pistons and talk about them every single day. So I'm really hoping you guys are enjoying the videos so far. It is very slow right now in the offseason, and I know you guys are really itching to get your fix of Pistons basketball. So I'll talk about different stuff on here. I'll talk about some of the Lions games as well as we get closer to Pistons training camp, and just talk about how I think the Pistons can try and replicate what the Lions are doing over in Allen Park, and the Tigers as well. So it's really cool to see that this city is just coming together as one. They have great relationships among their teams, social media posts about each team. They congratulate them when the other teams are doing well, and it's just there's a coexistence that we really haven't seen from Detroit sports in the past, and I think it's just very, very fun, and just really helps embody the grit that I know Detroit fans and these Detroit teams have really started to tap into over the last couple of years. But it's never been a better time to be a Detroit sports fan, at least in my lifetime. So let's enjoy it, and as we get ready for Pistons training camp, we can watch another Detroit team in the Lions in pursuit of bringing a title back to this city. So I love it. I love that Detroit is back, really, and I love that Trajan Langdon was over there today checking in on the Lions and just kind of immersing himself in the Detroit sports scene. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know in the comments or over on Twitter your thoughts on Ron Holland as a potential trade asset, or are you in the same boat as me and would you like to see Ron Holland develop as a Piston? Also, let me know what you thought of Caris LeVert's first media availability, what he had to say, and your just thoughts on overall what you expect to see from him in a Pistons jersey this year. As always, like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, and follow me on Twitter at Kyle Garrison 2. Also, head over to Spotify, leave a 5-star review, leave a follow if you can. I would greatly appreciate it. Once again, thank you all so much for tuning in every single day. With that being said, that is going to do it here for episode 34 of Pistons Daily, and I will catch you all next time.